3, 2, 1.
Hello and welcome to Rugby League Fanfare, brought to you by the International Rugby League Supporters Federation. My name's Rob Corra. I'm your host for this, our April 2023 edition. And in our April edition, most people know that rugby league is the national sport of Papua New Guinea. But there is another nation where rugby league is the national sport, the Cook Islands. And I thought we should find out why this is the case. To do so, we're going to speak to the president of the Cook Islands Rugby League, Charles Carlson. So, Charles, welcome to Rugby League Fanfare.
Kia ora, Rob, and also kia ora to your listeners and to everyone that's tuning in to your program.
So, Charles, thank you very much for that. Charles, just briefly, do you know when rugby league first got played in the Cook Islands? When did it all sort of start up?
Rugby league started back in the late 70s. It was informally played, and they managed to get a couple of senior teams together through the 80s when it was established. And the Cook Islands really came on to international scene when they won the Emerging Nations in 1995. Of course, that led to the Cook Islands playing in their first World Cup in 2000. So rugby league is still fairly new here in the Cook Islands.
All right, because the current competition, the game before the current competition commenced in 1992. Before then, you would say it was just sort of social matches were being played.
Yes, there was social matches being played locally, and, because the guys was just learning the games, and bearing in mind at the time rugby union was our main game on the island, so rugby league was kind of trying to feel its way and getting itself established here in the Cook Islands. And I expected, you do get some opposition to the code getting established here in the Cooks. But eventually they managed to get themselves established. And I think participating in the Emerging Nations actually lifted the profile of the game.
Okay. And Charles, the current competition, I see there are 7 clubs. Has there been sort of like a dominant club or a couple of clubs that have dominated this competition throughout its history?
Yes, we have a couple of clubs here that's it has a long history, being dominant in a competition. We have the Avatu Nico Eels, and we have the Toowoomba Panthers and Ararangi Bears. But back in those days, every club was very competitive. But over the years, these 3 clubs, including this Ngatinga Sea Eagles, has managed to to take the lead in the competition. So like any game, you never know what's the result gonna be until the game finishes. But normally it's between the Eels and the Toowoomba Panthers that has been dominant in the past couple of years that I have been involved with rugby league.
All right. And are all the clubs, Charles, located on the Big Island, the main island of Rarotonga?
Yes, most of the clubs are established on the main island Rarotonga, and we do have a club that's based in Aitutaki, one of the outer islands, who has been part of our national competition. But unfortunately, with the pandemic, the past couple of years, kind of didn't help with the national games, and there was difficulties getting the teams across here and our teams across to the island too. So at the moment, we're just focusing on teams here on the main island.
Yes, because I noticed the competition was suspended for a couple of years there during that the COVID pandemic, but that virtually happened everywhere. So yes. Now, Charles, I see that there's a first grade competition. You've also got the reserve grade or A grade competition, as it's called. And what about at the junior level? Are there competitions for junior rugby league in the Cook Islands?
Yes, when I came on board in the around the 2003, 2004, the focus was only on premier grades. Like I said, bearing in mind in those days, it was pretty much dominated by rugby union. But then over the years, we always tried to make an effort to target the junior grade. So we kind of add on a under 17 and under 15, or depending on the age group. And slowly over the years, we managed to add on junior grades. So this year, and we have the premier grades and plus under 19, under 16, under 14s, and for our junior grades from under 12s down to 10 and 8s, we actually combine them in the morning. We have run their program in the morning as part of our development, so they're being coached properly and trained properly. And the under 14s upwards, they actually play in the club. So the focus is on junior development. And we all know without juniors, there's no future to the game. So we're pretty strong on our junior development.
Yes, that's good. That's good. And also, I see that a women's competition started a few years ago.
Yes, we've been trying to get our women competition going, and we did struggle, especially with the impact of the pandemic here in the Cooks. But this year we actually managed to get four clubs on board, and it's been great. It's good to see the women's competition. In fact, it's quite popular over here. They play midweek. Because most of our games on a Saturday, but the women plays on a Friday, so we do have a crowd go and watch the women's game. And if I also mentioned, we had the Cook Islands women at the World Cup last year too.
Yes.
And so that actually helped with the profile of the women's here in the Cook Islands.
Yes, all right.
In their development. So I'm a strong believer in strengthening our international competition, and at the same time strengthening our national competition too. The two goes hand in hand.
Yes, okay. I'm going to talk to you about the World Cup in just a moment, but I just wanted to ask you, because your competition, the 2023 season, is about to come to an end, isn't it? We're getting close to the grand final in the Cook Islands. Is that the case?
Yes, that's correct. We have a top four playoffs. We started last week, and we have the Ararangi Bears women gone straight into the final. We have the Tupapa Panthers men that's straight into the final. So this week will be the playoffs between the losers and the winner of the 3 and 4. So we'll find out who's going to be in the grand final next week.
All right. And what are your thoughts, Charles? I mean, to give us an update. What's been happening in these games? Is there a clear favourite for the 2023 Premiership?
Yeah, well, as I mentioned before, there's the Tupapa Panthers and the Eels that's always dominated the competition and expected. They were the 1 and 2 that played last week, and after having a big lead, the other two Eels in the first half, 24-6, somehow the Panthers managed to get their act together and came back to beat the Eels 36-34. So it was a brilliant game, and we're expecting a big game this weekend between the Eels and the Bears. And to see who's going to meet the Panthers in the finals. And also with the women's too, the Bears was down and they were playing against the women's for the Panthers, and Panthers was in the big lead, and somehow we call the Mama Bears came back and beat the Panthers for place in the finals.
All right. We'll keep our listeners updated on those results. And is there plenty of media coverage of the game? TV, radio, newspaper coverage of the game in the Cook Islands, Chuck?
Oh, definitely. Our local media always gives us a good coverage. Plus, I get on very well with our sports media person, always hassling me for an update and what's going on, which is good. So, for example, on Monday, you would expect other codes to be in the paper, but what we had was a rugby league in the front page and rugby league in the back page, with other codes sort of sprinkled in the middle of the paper. So that's good promo for us. We do have sports program too on Wednesday once we finalize the draw, just to let everyone what's happening on the weekend starting tomorrow.
All right.
Friday, yes.
Okay, that sounds good. So, okay, Charles, I just wanted to look forward now to the, go into the future bit, the 2025 World Cup in France. Now, the Cook Islands, you were speaking there earlier, the Cook Islands women's team, they've already qualified for that tournament. They are one of the automatic qualifiers. But your men's team, they've got to go through a qualifying process. Can you tell us, do you know about the qualifying process? How the Cook Islands are going to qualify for 2025?
Yes, that's correct. Our women's automatically qualified for France in 2025, which is excellent result for our women. And for the men, we're just waiting to see who's the winner in the European Africa pool. And then we'll play the winner for the last spot in that pool.
Okay, so the winner of the African Cup, Cook Islands are going to play the winner of the African Cup.
Them African and the Middle East, they're combined. That
yes, okay.
Those two groups is combined. Because they sort of allocated the number of teams that comes out of each continental, and of course our Pacific pool is always the toughest pool to be in.
Yes, it is.
And unfortunately, we're the ones that missed out in the top 8, so we have to go back to the qualifying round. I thought it was going to be this year, but I think all the other nations in the Africa and the European.
Yes. The Middle East.
The Middle East had to sort of go through their qualifying and come up with the final result, and then we played the winner.
No, we did actually speak to, last month we were speaking to the South African captain, Shane Gillam, about this. So South Africa is involved in this, a qualifying tournament there. Nigeria, I know he was talking about Nigeria was involved. Apparently Ghana also. Apparently rugby league is becoming quite strong in some of these African nations. But yes, okay. So Cook Islands is going to play the winner of that series. Okay. So now, before you get to the World Cup, but Charles, there's a very important competition coming up in November this year, the Pacific Games. Can you tell us a bit about the Pacific Games?
Yeah, the Pacific Games is played every 4 years, and it's been going since the 60s. And the Pacific Games involves all codes, and rugby league is included in this competition. But the nation actually decides what codes participates in the Pacific Games. So it's not as though you got to play in every Pacific Games. We're fortunate that the Solomon Islands Rugby League had managed to include rugby league into this competition. I understand the next Pacific Games will be in French Polynesia, and because they don't play rugby league over there, so it will be a bit of a challenge for us to try have rugby league included in the next Pacific Games hosted by French Polynesia. So that's how it works. But for now, yes, we're planning to take 2 teams, our men and women, to the Pacific Games, which is to be hosted by the Solomon Islands.
And it must be Charles. It must be a big bonus to have someone like your coach is Kevin Iro. So that must be a big bonus to have Kevin Iro involved with the national team.
Yes, definitely. Both Kevin and Tony, because Tony has been involved with the Warriors and the Kiwis.
Yes.
And to have these guys back helping us. Well, Kevin is actually living here in the Cook Islands, so
Okay.
that's a big bonus for us, and it kind of really helped with the profile of the game here in the Cook Islands, and of course
Yes.
having the expertise
Yes.
in
No,
the development of the game.
I saw his son because is it Kevin?
KL.
Yes, KL plays over here for Cronulla or Newtown. He's playing for Newtown at the moment in the New South Wales Cup.
Yes.
He's played last year as well. He's quite an impressive player, actually. He's I'm sure he's bound for first grade at some stage, mate. But I saw him last week. Newtown were playing North Sydney there at Henson Park. He's this is his second year, but I think he's been playing there. But very impressive, mate. He's very, very aggressive, dangerous runner with the ball, and I'm sure he's going to end up in first grade sooner or later.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. I mean, he made his debut last year with the Sharks, and it's still young. I mean, he played a couple. I mean, made his debut with us. He was only 18 or 19 at the World Cup Nines, and played a couple games for our international squad. So I guess like most young players, just waiting for the opportunity.
Yes.
But he's got plenty of years ahead of him. He'll make it to the top side.
I do think that he's a definite first grader player. He's deceptively strong. He doesn't look. He's not. Well, he's nowhere near as big as his father. Let's put it that way. But he's deceptively strong. He's able to push through tackles, get through tackles, and he's very quick. He's quick and good on his feet. But he's sort of. He doesn't look like a strong person, but he is. He's able to get through tackles, mate. So he's quite a dangerous player when they get the ball to him. Charles, just finally, I just wanted to ask you, why is rugby league so popular in the Cook Islands? Why do you think the game's become so popular over there?
Well, it comes down to the good management, I guess, is a good start, and the people we have on board are very passionate of the games, because it's a challenge. Like I said, with the island being dominated by rugby union, but over the years, just the persistence and commitment of our volunteers. I mean, we're all volunteers in this game, and having the visions of what we want to achieve here in the Cook Islands, and where we see ourselves in our national competition and also at the international level too. So that really helped with the development of the game. But I must say that the media does have a big impact on our game. I recall, a few years back, we were really struggling with pushing the game across into the community. And at the time, the NRL was being played on the BBC, because we get BBC over here, so we were getting the game on our local TV, and everybody was watching the NRL. Within a year, that actually turned the whole game around. So it just shows you the power of the media. We struggled to get NRL games over here because it's quite costly for us to buy the game.
Yeah,
and we did approach our, the NRL and our Asia Pacific Rugby League Confederation, because I'm on the board. If there's a way we can actually at least get one free-to-air game here, and not only the Cook Islands, it affects all the Pacific Islands, so they don't get a free-to-air game at all. So that's a challenge for us, getting some free-to-air NRL games here in the Cook Islands and across the region too.
Because what you're saying, the BBC, to watch the BBC coverage, is there some sort of charge involved? Is that free-to-air TV?
No, the BBC is free-to-air, but we only get the Australian football on BBC. We don't get NRL on BBC. Okay,
you do not get the rugby league on the BBC. Okay, that's not
because rugby league is on Fox and Sky New Zealand. So if we need to get a game over here, we have to buy it off Sky in New Zealand, and it's very costly for us to buy.
Yes. Okay, that's interesting to hear. Anyway, well, look, Charles, thanks very much for joining us on Rugby League Fanfare, and best of luck for the future.
No, thank you, Rob. And otherwise, it's all good for rugby league over here, and we're looking forward to the Pacific Games. If I may add, the Pacific Games was mainly put together for local, for the local competition. So there's just a pathway for the local players to go through and hopefully they make their way to future games like the NRL, and we'll be focusing on a lot of our local players in the Pacific Games.
Oh yes, okay, yeah, I understand.
And probably still get some overseas players just to help out, beef up the team.
Yeah,
providing also they meet the criteria for the Pacific Games.
Yeah, but the Pacific Games this year in Solomon Islands, so I'm imagining that Samoa and Tonga will be involved, and
yes, definitely. Papua New Guinea.
Yeah, Papua New Guinea. Yeah, okay, yeah, all right. I thought, but that's going to be a good tournament, mate. That'll be a good test.
Yes.
Of the local. Yes, it'll be a good test for the local league. Okay, Charles, thanks so much for joining us here.
Thank you very much, Rob. Kia ora nei kia manuia. All the best.
Okay, once again, thank you to Charles Carlson for giving us a very thorough insight into the game of rugby league in the Cook Islands. Now, just quickly, some other international rugby league news. There's been some international matches played recently, with England playing France in both the men's and the women's games, and two very big score lines. In fact, it was 64-0 in both matches. So congratulations to England. But from the perspective of the international game, those are very worrying score lines. Now, the other thing that I wanted to mention was the NRL. Yes, the National Rugby League here in Australia, they're often criticised, and rightly so, for some of the decisions they've made. Personally, I believe that some of the decisions they've made have had a great impact on the international game. Currently, they're involved in a campaign to eradicate a particular tackling style, which is never going to happen because they're asking players to do the physically impossible there. They're asking players to defy physics. Anyway, I digress. I did want to congratulate the NRL for something they did on Anzac Day this year. If you're not aware, every year the NRL has an Anzac Day round where the service of Australian men and women in the armed services is remembered. Well, this year they put on a day for some Ukrainian children out at the Olympic Stadium. You're probably aware that there is a war in Ukraine at the moment. It's a war that will never be won, and neither side will win this war. There's been terrible casualties and damage done in Ukraine, and even for the Russians. The Russians will suffer because of this war. This is Russia's Vietnam, you might say. A lot of children in Ukraine have been displaced. A lot of them have, lost one or both parents. And a lot of them have found their way to Australia. So the NRL put on a day for them out at the Olympic Stadium. They had some coaching clinics there, barbecue. They had a service for the Ukrainians who have died in this conflict. A lot of Ukrainian sports people have died in this conflict. And from all reports, the entire... Excuse me. From all reports, the entire Ukrainian National Rugby League team has enlisted into the army. I noticed that the president of the Ukrainian Rugby League has put out a request for any players of Ukrainian descent in Australia and England to make themselves available for selection for the Ukrainian team. Don't forget that Ukraine is involved in the European qualifiers for the next World Cup. Ukraine is in that group with Greece and Norway. So it would be great to see someone like Nathan Cleary in the yellow and blue helping the Ukraine qualify for the next World Cup. But I thought the NRL should be congratulated for giving those, well, distressed children something to smile about. Okay, that's about all we have time for you this month. We hope you've enjoyed the show. Until next month, you've been listening to Rugby League Fanfare, brought to you by the International Rugby League Supporters Federation. My name's Rob Corra. On behalf of President Bob Brown, this show was recorded in the studios of Undercover Music. Your producer is Lachlan McLean. Until next month, may the force be with you.
Go